Good afternoon. Uh, Welcome to my teachings. My name is Raymond T. Murwira. I am a Zimbabwean by birth. I was born in Zimbabwe and I was raised in Zimbabwe, which is a southern African country in Africa, in southern Africa. Well, today we want to talk about an interesting topic, a topic which many people have been eager to talk about and to hear from other people. They themselves have not been in a position of having the freedom of discussing such topics. uh, the topic that I have today is a topic of I want to talk about African spirituality, African culture versus European culture, the difference between African culture and European culture. First of all, we want to define uh, what is culture for people to understand what we're talking about. According to my own knowledge and my own understanding, African culture is the way people live. That is culture to me. The way people live, the way people are civilized. Uh, the kind of food they eat, the kind of homes they build, the kind of dressing they have, the kind of grooming, uh, the kind of uh, language they speak, uh, their gatherings, their setup, how they gather as families, how they gather as a society, how they gather together as a nation, and the things that they do in their day-to-day lives. So when we talk of culture, we're talking about civilization, because culture is civilization. Civilization is an organized culture. That's what we call civilization, an organized culture. And the way people live within a society, we're talking about societal structures. So today we want to discuss, and I want to pinpoint some certain facts, and I want my black African people to know the difference between African culture and European culture. So, when we talk of African culture, the first thing that comes in my mind when I hear the word African culture, the first thing that comes in my mind is African history. Because life didn't start today, civilization didn't start today. Civilization started thousands and millions, if not billions, of years ago. We call them epics or epochs, meaning a long time ago. That's when civilization started. Uh, so, according to history, the true history, African history, that was recorded by people from the ancient times, from the past, people like the kings, royal kings that ruled in African kingdoms, ancient African kingdoms, a long time ago. Uh, these kings, they left a mark, a very remarkable imprint on African history. They are the ones who wrote a history which a lot of people, if they hear that history, they'll actually be shocked, they'll be surprised that African people uh, used to live in a way which is so much different from the way African people are living now. So when we talk of African culture, a long time ago, uh, African, the African continent had so many different kind of kingdoms which were ruled by African kings. These kings were called pharaohs. I am talking about ancient Egyptian. Ancient Egypt and ancient Kemet. These are the oldest civilizations recorded in history. Ancient Egypt and ancient Kemet. The other one was called Lower Egypt, and then the other one was called Upper Egypt. Now, these cities, ancient cities, African cities, were divided by a river in between. There was a river in between those cities, and this river was called the Nile River. So, this Nile River was not just an ordinary river. It was a river which had so many things involved. And these things are actually spiritual events which took place each and every year. The Nile River would flood, and it would provide irrigation for the Egyptians and the Kemets. That is the Upper Egypt and the Lower Egypt. And then people would harvest crops like, maize, like mafunde, munga, erukweza, barley, which they used to make, certain alcohol, certain beer, certain alcoholic beverages, which they then used in their African customs, like the rain-making ceremonies, which we call in our Shona language mukwerera. And then they used to also brew this beer for activities like the Passover ceremonies as well. So, how did the people of the Egyptians and the Kemets, how did these people know that this was now the time for the Nile River to flood? Now, they used sacred knowledge, which is hidden knowledge. They used the eastern stars. When I talk of stars, I'm talking of the stars which governs this universe, the stars which governs this earth. This earth is governed by stars, and these stars are divided into groups of several stars, and then each star consists of a planet, and these planets are Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Uranus, Saturn, and so many other planets. But the major planets which governs the universe and which governs the cosmos are the 7 planets. So today we're going to expand and explain the spiritual meaning that was behind the connection of this Nile River and the eastern stars. Now, as we all know that the Egyptian country, or the Egyptian part of the continent, is located near the Middle East, along the Platonic stone of the Middle East. So now what happened is that the stars would show themselves in a certain way, and only kings and pharaohs and the enlightened ones, they are the ones who could tell what these stars were saying, and then they would act according to the knowledge of those stars. So this is part of African spirituality, and not only in Egypt and in Kemet was this spirituality done. In all the parts of Africa, African people used to tell the times according to the stars of the universe, the 7 planets of the universe that governs the universe, and every event that happens upon here, the earth. So the Egyptians were black African people with dreadlocks. If you go on your social media, on your internet, on your Google, if you Google what the ancient Egyptian people look like, they looked like black African people like us, which they call the Negroid. The Americans and then the Europeans really enjoy calling us Negroid. Uh, so, uh, our African culture has a rich history dating back from thousands and millions, if not billions of years ago. And this culture was documented and was written down by people who lived during that time. And that is the culture, the true African culture that existed before any other culture which exists now. So where where then does the European culture fit here? The European culture came later. Okay? The European culture that we know now did not exist during these times. Okay? African people only knew their culture and African people only practiced their culture. There is no any other culture which belonged to any race which the African people knew and which the African people practiced here in Africa. Black African people only practiced African culture. Okay? So, European culture then started dominating here in Africa around the 18th and the 19th century. That is when the great African, around these times, that is when the great African kingdoms started collapsing. Here in Zimbabwe, we had so much great kingdoms which ruled the African continent and the world at large. And these kingdoms include the Great Zimbabwe State, the Mutapa State, or the Mwene Mutapa State, and then we have the Rhozi State, and then we have the Nguni State, and then we have the Ndebele State. And then we have so many other states dating back from the 15th century going backwards. So, when African people started coming in Africa, they came to colonize Africa. And when they did this, there was a shift in the Africans' education system. The African education system was colonized by the Europeans, and the syllabus changed, and we started using European language, and then the English language became the universal language which was spoken by black African people in all African schools. And then they changed the curriculum. They started teaching us about European history, and then they started documenting European history as part of the African education curriculum. That's when people started learning about European culture, and that's when people started changing the way they think, and then people started forgetting who they are, and then they started practicing European culture, and then they started having white weddings. They started, engaging in immoral activities, such as cohabiting, living with a woman without marrying that woman, which is an immoral act. Because in our African culture, you have to pay lobola, you have to marry first, because this woman that you are living with, she's a woman who was raised by her parents or by her guardians or by her relatives. And these relatives played a major role, and they did a lot. They sacrificed a lot, for this woman to be what she is today. So when a man wants to have that woman as a wife, they have to pay the bride price first, which is what we call lobola in our own African tradition. And then they are now allowed to take that woman as a wife. And this is our African culture from ever since the ancient times. So this culture and this way of living started changing when the Europeans came into Africa, and everything else started changing. The pharmacology system changed, the education system changed, the political system changed, the economic system changed, the social system changed, our spirituality changed, and the way we viewed God, and the way we saw God, and the way we used to worship Him in our African culture, in our own African tradition, everything changed ever since the European came into Africa. So if you want to look, if you are to look at how the African man behaves now, the African man behaves in a way that is not his own way, which is not a natural way of behaving. And all this behavior, where does it come from? All this behavior comes from the mind. Okay? The way someone thinks is how he behaves. So everything that we're seeing now, we can see people walking around almost half naked, people walking around as if they are in their own, bedrooms, dressing like prostitutes, dressing like people who have no dignity and who have no moral value at all. So this is what, these are the effects of European culture. If you turn on your TV right now, if you watch European TV channels, you can see for yourself what I'm saying. I am not dissing the Europeans or saying bad things about the Europeans, no. But I am speaking the truth as it is. I am speaking how European culture destroys the black African man's culture. And this culture is now the dominating culture here in Africa. People are living in a way which is not in line with the principles of the Creator because of this European culture. You see, so we need to decolonize this part. You see, we need to decolonize the European mindset, the European way of thinking. For example, what am I really saying? What am I really talking about here? If a black man starts getting money, the first thing that the black man starts to think is that he is supposed to dress like a European. A black man starts wearing a suit and a tie, or some call them tuxedos, and then he starts looking flashy, and then he starts wearing, gold rings, gold chains, that is a detrimental kind of mindset, because you are who you are. The suit and the tie part is a European idea, a European culture, a European way of dressing, not an African way of dressing. We have our own way of dressing. We dress our own way. We have, we just put on natural clothing, ordinary clothing to cover our body. And that is the grooming knowledge that we have always had as Africans ever since we were young. But ever since the European culture came into Africa, they came and then they forced it on black African people. And now black African people are now behaving in an abnormal way, an acceptable way, despicable way. A black man starts thinking, as if he is now a European because he now has money. Even the poor black African poor people, they have an European kind of mindset because they have been taught European culture. So people need to know who they are, where they come from. They need to know their culture. They need to know their traditions. These traditions and these cultures that I'm talking about, which are African cultures and traditions, are written in history. Okay? These are history books, and these history books are everywhere. If you find them, you get them, and you know what I'm saying, and you get the information for yourself. You need to read, to educate yourself and learn and know how we used to live as African black people, and the kind of lifestyle we used to have, the kind of culture we used to have, and what was this culture all about. This culture was all about knowledge of self, was all about knowing who you are, where you come from, your dignity, back from our ancestral roots. So people need to educate themselves with this knowledge. People need to know who they are. We need to decolonize this European mindset, in order for us to eliminate this European culture, which has caused so much damage and so much immorality and so much corruption and so much inhumanity within the black African continent. You see, black people need to know who they are, and black people need to rise up and know who they are and stand for who they are. Because a people who has forgotten their origin is like a tree which has forgotten its roots. So black African people need to wake up, and black African people need to educate themselves. If you are hearing me right now, wherever you are, you're in Africa, you are in Asia, you are in Europe, you are in the Americas, wherever you are, and if you are a black African man or a woman, this message is for you. This message is for you. Black African people need to rise up, because black African people are now in darkness. Black African people no longer know who they are. Black African people are now busy praising and putting other people's cultures on pedestal, and valuing other people's cultures, whilst they are shaming their own cultures instead of praising their own culture. So black African people need to wake up. Black African people need to know who they are. You see, because this European culture has caused so much damage, and this is now the time for black African people to know the truth and to rise up and to start teaching their children the right things, the right norms, the true African culture. This true African culture preserves even the next generations to come, because this culture is true culture. It is a culture of love, a culture of dignity, a culture of morality. You see, because we as black African people, even if we are about to eat, about to dine, we gather as a family and we say our Thanksgiving, and then we wash our hands, and then we eat together. We dine together. That is how African people have been living ever since the ancient times. Even if it's agriculture, the whole community gathers, and the whole community plant together, and they do everything together. And when it's time to harvest, they also harvest together. Yes, that's our culture. And no man would say, this is mine, because no one was greedy. Every man was equal. Everyone had enough to eat. Everyone had a home to stay. Yes, the white man is the one who came here and introduced hard tax, whereby black African people started paying hard tax money in their own land. Imagine how corrupt and how evil. What kind of an evil mindset. A stranger would just come from Norway and then come into my home and then start telling me that you need to go and find money to pay for the staying that you're doing in my own home. What kind of rubbish is that? So we as African people, we need to wake up, and we need to realize that black African people, this is your time to rise up. This is your time to fight for your rights. This is your time. And there is no any other time. The time is now. So I hope this message will enlighten you, and will educate you, and will teach you, and will make you rearrange. I hope this message will rearrange the way you think, so that it rearranges also the way you behave, your behavior. You need to start acting like a real Israelite. Black African people are the Israelites. Yes, Israel is in Africa. Israel means is, Ra-El, which is Israel. Is. Ra. Ra is another word for God, Jehovah, the Creator. Is. Ra-El. El, which stands for Elohim, who is the creator of the heavens and the earth and of the universe. So black African people are the children of Israel, not the white man. The white man was never part of the 12 tribes of Israel. You see? So I thank you for your time. I thank you. May the grace and the peace of Yah and Jah be with you, and may you be blessed, you and your families, and may this message have a place in your heart, and may this message have an impact in your life, because this is the time for the African child to rise and to claim his identity and his place. Okay, so with those words, I thank you. My name is Raymond T. Murwira. I am a historian and a philosopher, and I'm here to teach people and to educate people. My topics are all about Pan-Africanism, Black root science, how, people how Black African people used to live. What was their civilization like compared to this modern day civilization world? So with those words, I thank you. May the grace and the peace of Yah be with you all. I thank you.